Welcome back to T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. Thank you so much for coming back for more. I apologize that I left so many of you hanging from last week's episode. I hemmed and I hawed. Was this going to be one marathon episode or two episodes? And honestly, it turned out that I just ran out of time. I didn't have time to record an episode for this week. And this really needed to be this week's episode, or I would have missed you guys, or you would have missed me. At least I hope you would have missed me. Maybe not. Maybe you wish I'd go away. But we're going to jump back into my continuation of my conversation with Jesse Cobb. I hope you all heard last week's episode, 1 of 2 for Jesse Cobb, my conversation with Jesse Cobb. You can jump in at this point. We do get to what everybody is waiting to hear right out of the gate. The big deal, the elephant in the room, the gorilla in the room, whatever you want to call it. We're going to jump right into that. So if you don't want to hear what led us to this conversation, well, I think you should go back and listen. The first conversation is really good. But at this point, let's jump into my continuation, episode 2 of 2 of my conversation with Jesse Cobb. I want to make sure that we at least address. So you had an amazing time with Dusters, and leading up until 2011, kind of the gorilla in the room, or the elephant in the room, so to speak, you announced on, I believe it was social media, your departure of the Dusters October 5th, 2011, citing mental and physical stress and Turing being away from his family as the reasons for your exit. But it doesn't take a genius to do the math. That was 4 days before the Festi Experience, the infamous String Dusters annual festival. Odd timing, to say the least. And then immediately afterwards, on the 11th of October, the We'll Do It Live album was released. And anybody who purchased the pre-sale, the We'll Do It Live album was autographed by all the band members, but your autograph was absent. So just kind of doing the math, I have a feeling there's a little more to it than just mental health.
Yeah, there was. There was, it it got to be a messy thing. It was a divorce between me and 6 of my buddies. It was basically getting divorced. It wasn't a voluntary departure. I believe I can say that now. It wasn't voluntary. That was just kind of my way of like, I don't know really what else to say. I don't know how else to. In hindsight, I wish I would have, just told the whole story up front, which at this point I don't know if I'm legally allowed to.
And I don't want to get you in
Um,
trouble. I mean,
no, no, I mean, I think I could say that. But I just I had just gotten married in 2010, and I had moved to Victoria, British Columbia, and I toured out of there for half of the year of 2010, and extremely stressed. We talked about the time it takes to get to Nashville from Vancouver Island. So we'd end up a tour in Boston, and I'd fly to Seattle, and I had a car in Seattle, and I'd drive to Port Angeles, and I'd take a ferry over. And some of those days were like 20 something hour days, and
oh,
the band wasn't covering my travel. The tour is over, and guys would ride back to Nashville in the van, and but I would end up flying home, and then, oh, we're going to start the tour in wherever, Minneapolis. So instead of flying to Nashville, I'd fly to Minneapolis or wherever we were starting the tour, and that kind of wasn't covered either. Like, it's a personal travel expense. So I was spending all this time and money getting to these gigs, and plus I just had this new family. I'd just gotten married. My wife had 3 and 6-year-old daughters, and I was trying to adjust to this family life, And we ended up moving to Ontario because it was closer to the Buffalo airport. My wife had a job opportunity there, and she signed like a three-year contract to take this job in this little town called Welland, which was really close to the Buffalo airport, which Southwest Airlines, which used to be the shit, flew in and out of.
Musician's
So
favorite.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this will be, yeah, I mean, it used to be, I guess. But we ended up moving there, and we were playing this festival called Fresh Grass in some little town in, can't remember the name of North Adams, Massachusetts, right near the New York state border of Massachusetts. And I had ended up driving down there because it was kind of a one-off gig, right? And there was an incident where I kind of got a little loose, a little drunk, and I ended up making a scene with somebody in the band. And I'll say this, probably not the first time that happened. Um, well, I shouldn't say probably, not the first time that happened, not the first time the surly logger in Jesse Cobb came out. Nothing physical, just some yelling. And anyway, on the ride back, those guys on the ride back to Nashville, I left that night and drove back to Welland, and the guys rode back to Nashville, and they decided they didn't want me in the band anymore. And that was a huge blow. I mean, an absolutely huge blow, especially as you say, given the timing of it. And I was just kind of left like, whoa, what the hell? Tried to take my responsibility for it and tried to make things right however I could, but just wasn't enough, and came to the point where it's like, no, no, we're going to move on without you. And then, like, well, what do we do? We've got all this, we've got all these expenses, we've got all these things we own, we've got all these bookings in the future. How do we handle that? Our legal paperwork wasn't completely defined. So we had to get lawyers involved. And once lawyers got involved, things didn't end up going really well for anybody. And it just turned into a big shit show, to be honest. And I regret that it happened the way it did, but I can't see an alternative, because the alternative, we tried it without lawyers, and the alternative wasn't anything that I was willing to accept. So at the end of the day, it just, the worst part about it is it destroyed these friendships that I had for 5 or 6 years or more. Some of them almost 10 years, with Andy and Jeremy, going back to playing with Ronnie Bowman. These super solid friendships and musical collaborations were just upended by legal bullshit. It wasn't good for anybody. It was just a horrible thing, and it got pretty intense, pretty nasty. It sucked.
Well,
Um,
I mean, like you said at the beginning, it was a
yeah,
divorce. You guys are a
yeah,
band is a marriage, and six
for
people, it's
sure.
hard enough to keep your wife happy, I'm certain, and vice versa. And that's just one person. When you get six people together, that and living in a van together, probably sharing the same hotel room, oftentimes in a very uncomfortable way. Somebody takes the short straw, sleeps on the floor or the couch. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing to my family that I had. And when I kind of it felt like when I kind of needed that family the most, they were gone.
Ah,
So, it was a tough thing to deal with. It just drug on forever and ever and ever. And yeah, it was kind of a really, really rough thing. On the upside of that, like I did spend some time with all of those guys at IBMA, um, which was great. And I actually thought about texting you, but we had a jam. Me and G Grass and Falco, we had a jam which we hadn't done in years. And I went back after their main stage performance there. I'd seen Falco earlier, and we kind of talked a little bit, picked some tunes, and he was like, "Hey, come backstage after the show." So I
That's
watched the show, and
fantastic.
you know, yeah, went back there and kind of reconnected with everybody. And there's no bad blood on my side or on theirs. There's and it's sad to even say it's sides at this point. Like enough time has passed that that's that's the way it went. I imagine it's probably like this if a person gets divorced from their wife. You might be angry as hell for 5 years or something, but then eventually time heals all wounds, right? And I think time has done its thing there, which is great. I still get kind of emotional about it because that was my family, that was something that I really believed in, and I really worked hard to bring my part to it. But it was really good to reconnect with those guys, and big hugs all around, and like, tell me about what's going on in your life. And of course I see what's happening in theirs because they're all over doing everything all the time, right? So, and I'm glad that they are. I'm glad that the band went on and did all the things it did, and it's great. I'm not at all in any way jealous or like, oh, I might be dead if I'd stayed there. I might, who knows? You know what I mean? I don't really know. I
Well,
don't
and you
really
certainly
know.
would have had a hard time. You would have missed out a lot of your children's childhood, and they're probably teenagers and beyond at this point, maybe even college bound or beyond. I don't
Yeah,
know the math, but
yeah, they're 24 and 21, and 18 years of family, man. And it's something that I'd always wanted in my life, is that, but once once I got it, I was like, holy crap, how do I do this and tour 150 dates a year? How do I do this? And that's where the mental health thing ties in, right? Because I just felt like I was conflicted as hell. And I actually remember talking to our manager one time at a festival out in California, and he ended up coming out, and I remember him asking me. He shared a room with me, and he asked me, like, Cubby, what is it that you want? What is it that you really want? And I remember
is that
telling
Michael
him, like,
at the
yeah,
time?
Michael
Okay,
Allenby.
Allenby, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember not being able to answer that question, and I just remember telling him, I want it all, man. I want the family life, I want the touring life, I want all of this. But it's almost, I envy the people who can make it work, and there are people who make it work. There are people who can do that. At least looking from the outside, it appears that way anyway, to where, like, this, you can have your family life and have your career touring on the road all the time and make those two things work. For me, they didn't work. It's almost as simple as that. I felt like I was pulled all directions, all times, and it was just this put me in this crazy, crazy space where I wanted to do this really bad, but I also wanted to be home with my family, and it's just this constant state of conflict that,
FOMO.
you know,
What all the fans
came out this
experienced
thing.
at IBMA. You can't do it all at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish there was a way that it could be done. For me, there wasn't. I think for some people they can do that, but for me, it seemed like an impossible task. So something had to give, as my therapist said. Well, something had to give,
Something had to give.
and I mean, something had to give.
We'll tell
So
you
there we
what,
go.
Jesse. As a human, I really appreciate and respect that sometimes things just don't work out. But I can also say, as a fan, it was a blow to us as well. The diehards, you were a pivotal piece of that band, and you'll always be a pivotal piece of that band. And We'll always have to wonder what might have been, what could have been. But as you kind of mentioned, it seems like everything happens for the reason. And ultimately, it sounds like it worked out. I hope it worked out. I hope you truly believe and feel that way. And now we're going to take a quick pause for a message from our sponsor.
1, 2. It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Hello, I'm Trevor Shaw. I'm not just a bluegrass aficionado. I'm a bluegrass aficionado that's a mortgage loan officer at Chat Mortgage in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'd be honored for the opportunity to help you get your residential mortgage loan or refinance anywhere in Tennessee, Georgia, or Colorado. From veterans using their hard-earned benefits to first-time home buyers needing down payment assistance to retirees finally getting the home they've always dreamed of. Call or text me today at 864-50-T-SHAW. That's 864-50-T-SHAW.
It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Chat Mortgage is powered by Alameda Mortgage Corporation, NMLS number 271603. Chat Mortgage is located at 6650 East Brainerd Road, Suite 208 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Phone number 423-591-9801. Trevor Shaw, NMLS number 929381. But at the same time, you've got a lot of other things going on. Since your move or departure, you've released 2 solo albums, Another Road by Jesse Cobb and Jesse Cobb's Solitude. I might not have actually announced those in the correct order. One's more of a traditional mandolin bluegrass, and the other one's a completely and totally different direction. Definitely not bluegrass, but still with mandolin.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I had it in my mind to make I'd written a bunch of songs living up in Welland, Ontario. I had met my producer and recording engineer for that session, and for both of those records was this guy named Mark Lalama who, I mean, nobody in America is going to know who Mark Lalama is, but in Toronto, he is a well-known fixture of the scene, right? He was they've got a show in Canada called, what's the singing competition in America?
The
Um,
Voice,
American Idol.
American Idol.
They
Okay.
they had they had Canadian Idol, which was filmed in Toronto, and it was the same premise. Well, Mark was part of the house band, and he was also, when they do their solo songs, he was the guy who he played piano, and he was the vocal coach for all of the contestants, right? So he's got this huge pedigree, lots of music school, studied with Oscar Peterson at university, and just all this crazy background. And he's an insane musician, just in general. I met him soon after I moved there to Ontario. I met Mark, and he started inviting me to he just kind of played locally around little bar gigs and stuff. And it's like invited me down one time. Why don't you come down here and play this gig with us? We couldn't get a drummer. So I started playing with him some, and it was just such a fun thing playing with legit heavy musicians where anything goes, and playing mandolin with electric piano and electric bass and sometimes a drummer, just some heavy local Ontario, Toronto session
And we're
guys,
talking about
so
the Another Road album, correct?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Background was I started kind of playing with Mark, and I met a lot of these people who were ended up being on the Another Road album. But before that, I just wanted to make an album of some sort. When I remember talking to Mark about it, and he was like, "Why do you want to make an album? You know, it's not gonna sell. It's not like you're gonna, hit the top of the charts. So why do we make records?" When I sat and thought about it for a bit, and before I could answer anything, he just said, "Well, you make an album because you have to." It's like, holy shit, never really thought about that. You just it's in you, and you've got to make it, right? And like, oh, that's a different take. So he had a studio in his house there. He grew up in that little town that I lived in and spent a lot of years in Toronto. And then when he semi-retired from the Toronto scene, he moved back and built a little compound in a place that's more affordable, and he had a little studio. I would go over there every once in a while and we'd hang out and just we were just buddies, right? And I was like, "Hey, think we could do a record here?" It's like, "Ah, what kind of record you want to make?" I said, "I just want to play some tunes." "Ah, come on over." So we did 3 sessions, and I just, I didn't have any idea what I really wanted to do. So I just sat down, I started playing tunes. It was all kind of improvised out, and most of it as live as possible. I think we spliced some takes, but not a lot of overdubbing and fixing. It was just like, all right, live off the floor type recordings. And I just, a solitude seemed to be a very fitting title because at the time, I was basically in solitude. There were maybe 2 other mandolin players around town. And after coming from a place like Nashville, where there's just great musicians everywhere all the time, it really felt like this complete fortress of solitude up there in the snowy Great White North. And the only guy who played mandolin around was this guy. So I made this record, and Mark graciously just kind of did it for me and put it out, and nothing really happened with it, but that the intent wasn't for anything to happen. I just wanted to make a record because I had to. Fast forward a little bit, and I was playing with Mark a little more, and I started writing a whole bunch of songs. Just stuff started kind of coming to me, and I liked them. So I started asking around, and I actually asked Billy Hume first if he would, longtime engineer and producer for the String Dusters, if he would like to be involved in this. And he was kind of asking me, well, who would you want to get? And I was like, oh, I want to get Critter, and I want to get this, and blah, blah, blah. And I want it to be a bluegrass record. And then I had this idea. I was like, well, what if I got Jeff Sipe and O'Teal Burbridge to play this stuff? That'd be cool.
That'd be
And Billy
cool.
was like, "Yeah, I I could get those guys." And I started kind of doing the math on making a record and traveling to Atlanta and blah blah blah, all this stuff that would be involved in doing that and with no label support. So I ended up figuring that, well, if I'm going to do an electric record, why don't I just get Mark to, I'll get, I wanted to originally get this guy Davide Dorenzo to play drums, and I had him all lined up, and he's just this incredible drummer, plays with Tom Cochran of all people, but he plays with a whole bunch of people, bunch of session stuff. If you listen to any Canadian music, he's probably on it. And same thing with the bass player, Rich Moore, just session guys that do a ton of stuff. So I booked these sessions, and I got this drummer and bass player that I'd played with here and there. The drummer ended up being on most of it was Lyle Molzan, who's just an incredible drummer. I don't know all that much about drums, but I loved his feel and I loved his energy and the things he played. And the same thing with Rich. None of these guys play bluegrass at all. So the album just took this left turn where it's like, ooh, well, what am I going to do on this song? Oh, maybe I'll play electric guitar. Oh, what are we going to do on this one? And it was just this completely organic process where I just sent these guys some demos of the tunes just recorded by myself on my phone or something. I charted it all out, sent it to them ahead of time because some of them are kind of complex. And we went into the studio and spent 4 days tracking this album, and that was the end of it. And a lot of it, some of it was live, some of it was me playing the tracks with them live and then overdubbing. And but that was a really fun album, and I wanted to kind of make something happen with that album. I really kind of wanted that album to be kind of, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to tour this album. I'm going to do this. It's going to be my new thing. And we ended up moving back to Victoria during the release. We were trying to wrap up the Kickstarter for this album. And then the album came out, and I sent it to some people, and I contacted some festivals. And there just didn't seem to be any interest in it, which was a big bummer because I was really stoked on it. I really liked it. And it was just a, kind of a blow of like, oh shit. I'm just like, what's going on here? Why don't people like this? And all the self-doubt and blah blah blah, all the shit that artists go through was there. And I ended up, just since there wasn't any interest in it, I sent it out to some record labels and people to review, and I didn't hear anything back. So there didn't seem to be any interest in it. So it's like, all right, well, maybe I just won't do music anymore. Maybe I'll just. So I was working for this painting company, and I just put my time into that and into raising my family and making sure everything was square there. And that's basically what I was doing up until the Unfaithful Servants came along, and then we got into that whole thing.
And
So
you're about to release, well, actually, yeah, how did you get involved with the Unfaithful Servants?
That's a fun little story. I had just moved to Victoria. I didn't really know too many people in the music scene, but I had known a couple of people because I'd spent a little time there before we moved to Ontario. So I knew a few people, and there was a open jam at this bar in town called the Duke Saloon, which has kind of country music most of the time. And I was invited, like, hey, we're having this local musician community jam and hang, come on down. So I went down, played some mandolin on some things, and I was taking a little break, and I was just sitting at a table drinking a beer, and this guy sidled up beside me, and he's like, hey, you look like you could use a friend. And I turned and I was like, what the hell is this guy trying to pick me up?
What kind of friend are you talking about?
Exactly. I turned and it's this guy, Dylan Stone. And he looked harmless enough, and I just turned to him and I said, yeah, I could. And he's like, hey, I'm Dylan. So it's like, I'm Jesse. And we just kind of started hanging out, and he was a guy just entrenched in the local scene there, just doing all sorts of things in the local bar gigs and little music scene we have going on in Victoria. And he just started calling me, hey, I'm doing this gig, you want to come down? We started hanging out, and I realized that not only does he play cover songs for bars, he also writes some really freaking cool songs. So we ended up just hanging out and jamming with a very kind of organic, natural start to things. We lived relatively close, within a couple of miles. Everything's within a couple of miles in Victoria. It's a pretty small town. So we'd end up just hanging out quite a bit, and he ended up hiring me for a session. He had a bunch of songs that he had written, and he wanted to make a record. And I went to this guy, Richard Moody, a great violinist in town, jazz violinist, and he also does recordings. And me and him, can't remember who played bass on it, maybe Oliver Swain, I think. We just went in one day, we recorded 10 songs, and Dylan called the album Dylan Stone and the Unfaithful Servants, and he'd always wanted to do a band called the Unfaithful Servants, which is from the band song The Unfaithful Servant. And we did this recording, and he was playing a few gigs around, and we started talking about who to get for a full-time member of the band. And I, bring in my bluegrass sensibilities, like, oh man, we got to have the vocals. So we found this woman named Miriam Sonstinis, who was in a band called the Sweet Lowdown there in Victoria, and their band was kind of on a bit of a hiatus, and we went through a lot of bass players at the start. We had a whole bunch, and we just started kind of playing regionally, doing whatever we could, and we made an album, an official Unfaithful Servants band album in 2017 at a studio a little bit up the island in Shawnigan Lake, and released this album, and we got some recognition for it and ended up playing a bunch of good festivals and started getting a little traction out of the thing. And as soon as that happened, then the big shutdown of COVID
Sure.
came, right? And like, oh shit. So even though the band started in 2017, it feels like it's pretty new since 2023
Okay.
is when we kind of got
Resurrected.
It back. We found,
Yeah.
we found Quinn and the new bass player and Cindy's Earth, and then we decided, hey, well, we got to make another album. Why? Because we have to.
And that album's coming up pretty soon, right?
It is October 17th. Yeah. That is right around the corner. We had some advanced copies down in Chattanooga. Did you get one, Trevor?
I did not. I didn't know it was there.
What? Oh shoot! I'll send you one.
So that's coming out October 17th. So pretty much by the time people are hearing this, it's right around the corner. Do you have, for lack of a better term, a Kickstarter campaign or somewhere fans can pre-order or order once it becomes available? Is it going to be released on hard physical copy or just streaming? Where can we get that?
It's going to be released hard physical copy. There's already, the first single is out. It's called Fallen Angel, and it should be out on all streaming platforms now. We released that Friday of last week at IBMA on the 19th, and hopefully it's getting played all over the radio in America.
Well, I'm going to start playing it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're trying to we went down to IBMA.
Can I play it on the podcast? Can I let it run on the podcast? Is that going to screw up royalties or whatever?
Sure. No, we got no label telling us what to do. The more it's played, the better it is.
We're going to attach it to this podcast.
Nice.
Perfect. Well, so it seems like looking at your touring schedule, you still have a day job, you mentioned, and it's incredibly difficult to make a living as a musician, especially in bluegrass, if you're not named Billy. It looks like you've got a pretty full tour schedule on your website.
Yeah, we're out right now. We're in Vancouver, and we're headed to a town called Penticton for a show tonight. We're doing some weekends. And we're out with the Canadian folk icon named Sherry Ulrich. We're doing some co-bill shows with her, which is a pretty cool thing. We had our first official show last night at the Rogue, at this hall in Vancouver for this organization called the Rogue Folk Club. And that was a really cool thing. That show was also live streamed, and I'm sure can be found somewhere, although I don't have a link to it. But it was a really cool thing. We've got a whole bunch of shows, weekends booked with her up until December, and then I think there's some stuff in 2026 in the spring as well. But we went down to IBMA as an official showcase act, and Canada is a very hard place to tour in because the towns are so far apart.
Yes.
So we definitely want to get down into the States where there's more bluegrass type music and it's more of a commodity than here. Up here, it's more of a, oh, wow, that's something interesting that I've never heard. Whereas in America, there's a ton of bands doing similar things to us. Right?
Sure.
So we want to, and there's also 10 times as many people. So, and the towns are much closer together.
Yes.
So we want to break into that for sure. And hopefully IBMA was a good inroad to that. Yeah. But as I said at the start, it's an expensive prospect to do that. So we just got to find the right things and the things that make sense to go do. And I'm sure they will come.
Yeah, you want it to at least break even.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fully self-funded album, and it's the way we wanted to do it. I mean, we'd love to have a label pick it up, but it feels like a really good thing to do. You're putting your own blood, sweat, tears, and money into making an album, and it's a really good feeling to know that you've done all of this stuff on your own. I really wanted to do that with this one and all the other guys too. We were just, let's freaking do it. So
we've been all the gigs that we're playing, they just go to funding an album, and everybody's good with it because we believe in it. We believe it's a good project and a good album, and I think it stands up to everything else out there. So I'm pretty stoked for it, and we had a good reception at IBMA.
I only got to see a limited selection of songs that you performed, but what I saw was terrific. I can't wait to see more of it, and it's going to be exciting, I think. You guys, especially in that part of the world, it's time to get the message out of some really good music.
Thanks. I think so too. We're all stoked for it and all in on it. So let's go. And we got T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass in our corner, so that never hurts.
Thank you so much. You've been incredibly gracious with your time for us today, but is there anything we haven't had a chance to talk about that's coming or that we should be aware of, or anything else you want to share before we wrap things up today?
I just think as many people who can call your radio stations and ask them to play Fallen Angel, and we're releasing 2 more singles one more before the release, and then we've got a couple more in the chute ready to go. And I just encourage everybody to give it a listen, man. And go out there and stream it. You can order it on our website. We'll ship it to you. As far as physical placement goes, I'm not sure, but almost everybody streams everything nowadays anyway. So physical albums are for live show purposes, it seems to me. But yeah, just give the album a listen, and I'd love to hear what everybody thinks. Check out our social media pages and give the band a follow and a like. Smash that like button, as they say.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jesse, it's been a true honor to speak with you today. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our listeners, T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass, for tuning in to this wonderful conversation with Jesse Cobb. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Trevor.
Wow. How about that, huh? The moment they announced the Ramble schedule for IBMA and I saw Unfaithful Servants, my mind immediately started racing. Because I mentioned it in previous episodes, I knew the infamous String Dusters and Jesse Cobb have not crossed paths prior to this last week at the IBMA, and I was just so excited for the possibilities. And, of course, the sit-in did not happen. Can't say I'm surprised or shocked, but I'm so relieved to know that they spoke and they jammed and they hugged, and just that hatchet needed to be buried. Thanks again for listening to T. Shaw's Progressive Bluegrass. Can't imagine doing this without you. So grateful that you're all here. Please stick around for just a moment longer for a quick message from our sponsor. Thanks again.
1, 2. It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Hello, I'm Trevor Shaw. I'm not just a bluegrass aficionado. I'm a bluegrass aficionado that's a mortgage loan officer at Chat Mortgage in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'd be honored for the opportunity to help you get your residential mortgage loan or refinance anywhere in Tennessee, Georgia, or Colorado. From veterans using their hard-earned benefits to first-time home buyers needing down payment assistance to retirees finally getting the home they've always dreamed of. Call or text me today at 864-50-T-SHAW. That's 864-50-T-SHAW.
It's a big purchase, it's a big deal. Trevor Shaw knows exactly how you feel for refinance or a new home. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan. Trevor Shaw will help you get your loan.
Chat Mortgage is powered by Alameda Mortgage Corporation, NMLS number 271603. Chat Mortgage is located at 6650 East Brainerd Road, Suite 208 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Phone number 423-591-9801. Trevor Shaw, NMLS number 929-381.